In the quiet woods of Montana, a man who once tutored math at the University of California lived alone in a small wooden cabin. No running water, no electricity, no phone. He called himself a modern-day Thoreau, but in secret, he was something far darker. And you're listening to My Maniac Mind, a true crime series about the minds that turn philosophy into bloodshed. This is the story of Ted Kaczynski, the so-called philosopher killer who hid behind a manifesto while mailing bombs across the United States. For nearly 2 decades, he stalked universities, airlines, and technology companies, leaving behind a trail of shrapnel and one chilling question. How could a genius turn his hatred of machines into a killing campaign? For 17 years, the FBI called him the Unabomber. He mailed at least 16 bombs. Dozens were injured. 3 people died. He never used his real name. He never spoke on camera. Yet today, some fans quote his manifesto like scripture. Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, and fringe thinkers call him a prophet who warned us about technology. But behind the myth is a man who loved the woods because he hated the people in them. Here's a question. When you hear the word philosopher, do you think of books, lectures, maybe a pipe and a sweater? Or do you think of someone who mixes Kant and wood shavings with dynamite? Ted Kaczynski did both. Ted Kaczynski was born in 1942 in Chicago to Polish-Jewish immigrant parents. His father ran a small sausage plant. His mother stayed at home. By American standards, they were a normal working-class family. But very early, Ted felt like he didn't belong. When he was just 6 months old, he was hospitalized with severe hives and locked in an isolation box for almost 8 months. His mother later said he never came back the same. After that, he became withdrawn. He was shy, scared, and deeply sensitive. Yet at the same time, he was terrifyingly bright. By age 16, he was accepted to Harvard University. At Harvard, he entered a special program for elite students. He was surrounded by older, more confident peers. He felt exposed. He was mocked and bullied. The real break in his life came from an experiment. Psychologist Henry Murray studied how people reacted to extreme stress. Students were invited to write candid essays about their beliefs, fears, and self-image. Then a lawyer would read those essays and tear them apart. The student sat in a chair while the lawyer shouted, "You're confused. You don't even know yourself." The whole session was recorded, and the tape was played back to the student, while sensors measured their stress. Ted later claimed these experiments didn't affect him, but in private, he admitted this was the worst period of his life. 3 years of being dissected, ridiculed, and watched spilled his trust in institutions. He finished his degree, then moved to the University of Michigan to study mathematics. By his late 20s, Ted Kaczynski had 2 terrifying desires. First, a sex reassignment surgery. Second, suicide. He tried to see a psychiatrist, but at the last moment backed out. Instead, he started fantasizing about killing that very doctor. He realized he was too cowardly to kill face to face, so he decided to kill from a distance, to kill without being seen, to kill as many people as possible before anyone connected the attacks. But before he became a bomber, he first tried to be a professor. He earned his PhD at the University of Michigan and then went to the University of California, Berkeley. Colleagues described him as polite but distant. He had no social life, he kept his door closed. Mathematics suited him because he didn't need to cooperate with anyone. After only a year and a half, he quit without explanation. Here's a thought. What if his real problem wasn't math? What if it was people? The more civilized the world, the more he felt like a ghost walking through it. Ted dreamed of disappearing. He wanted to live in the woods, far from cities, far from technology, far from people. In 1971, he bought a small plot of land in Lincoln County, Montana. He built a flimsy cabin and cut himself off from the world. Life there looked almost peaceful. He read books, hunted squirrels, tended a vegetable garden, and bathed in rivers. But Ted's mind was not calm. He hated the sound of airplanes. He resented neighbors who rode bikes through his woods. He once took a hatchet, broke into a nearby cabin, smashed bicycles, and defecated in the bathroom to send a message. To the people in the town of Lincoln, he was simply Teddy, a shy, quiet loner. They called him the Hermit. Ted Kaczynski didn't wake up one day and decide to be a terrorist. His rage built slowly, shaped by decades of resentment toward technology, academia, and the modern world. He read Thoreau, Jacques Ellul, and stories about Robinson Crusoe. He romanticized primitive life. He loathed cities. He hated machines. In the late 1970s, he wrote a manifesto called Industrial Society and Its Future. He claimed industrialization had destroyed human freedom. He argued that technology forced us into crowded cities, alienated us from nature, and turned us into cogs in a meaningless system. Humans, he wrote, had shifted from real tasks like hunting and farming to surrogate activities like art, sports, and science. And that, in his view, was a trap. Technology, he insisted, would keep tightening its grip. One day, he warned, people would live in a world that felt comfortable but empty. A brave new world of distractions and artificial pleasures. The only solution, he claimed, was to destroy the technological system. Transportation, factories, communications, medicine, all of it had to be dismantled, even if it meant mass death. His first bomb came in May 1978. He mailed a package to a professor at Northwestern University in Illinois. The professor never opened it. A police officer did. The device exploded, cutting his face and his hands. The bomb was primitive, handmade, constructed mostly of wood. No fingerprints, no clear suspect, no motive. At first, the police thought it might be a lab accident or a prank gone wrong. It was only when a second bomb appeared a year later that they realized this was a pattern. This time, a student at the same university opened the package and was injured. By November 1979, Ted escalated. He rigged a bomb inside a luggage container on a Boeing 727 carrying 78 people. The bomb misfired. It smoked, but it didn't detonate. The pilots landed in an emergency. Everyone survived, though 12 passengers were treated for smoke inhalation. In his journal, Ted lamented that his bomb had failed to kill anyone. After the airline incident, the FBI officially linked the attacks. They coined the name Unabomb, a mix of university and airline bomber. Ted wasn't just a madman mailing parcels. He had become a national threat. Yet the investigation was going nowhere. Over the next decade, Ted sent bomb after bomb. He targeted universities, computer shops, and executives tied to the tech world. In 1985, a man in Sacramento, California, opened one of his packages. He died instantly. The bomb was packed with bolts, nails, and metal fragments. It was designed to maim and kill anyone who touched it. By 1986, Ted had killed one person and injured several others. He was meticulous. He bought materials from hardware stores, used different handwriting styles, and planted fake clues. He even included strands of random hair he'd found on the street, hoping they would send the FBI chasing the wrong suspect. The FBI built a profile. White, educated, comfortable with wood and tools, likely anti-technology, probably living in a remote area. But that profile fit thousands of people. They followed hundreds of tips. Dead ends, innocent engineers, odd professors. The real bomber sat in his cabin, watching the chaos from afar. Here's something fascinating. Isolation can breed brilliance. But what happens when that brilliance is mixed with paranoia, rage, and zero empathy? Ted's cabin wasn't just a home. It was a workshop. A silent command center for a one-man war against the modern world. In 1985, a man in Utah spotted a medium-height figure with glasses and a beard leaving a suspicious package outside a computer store. The recipient was injured but survived. The sighting produced a crude sketch. Ted, terrified that someone had seen him, went underground. He stopped sending bombs for 6 years. During that time, he drifted even further from his family. His brother David had married. Ted responded with a series of angry letters. He smashed his brother's wife without ever meeting her. He accused her of dragging David away from his principles. He complained that his brother was abandoning his life of simplicity. Inside the family, tension mounted. In 1993, Ted Kaczynski resumed his campaign of terror. He mailed bombs to academics once again. A geneticist in California, a computer scientist at Yale. In 1994, he killed a woman in Sacramento who had worked to improve the image of a timber company after a major oil spill. She died when a package exploded in her hands. The next year, he killed a former lobbyist for the logging industry in Sacramento. 3 confirmed deaths, many more injured. The FBI's Unabomber task force was working around the clock. They studied every fragment, every letter draft, every handwriting variation. They knew the bomber was intelligent, patient, and deeply familiar with woodworking. But they still had no name. Psychologists who later studied his profile point to a mix of deep-rooted trauma, profound social failure, and untreated mental illness. For Ted, the world wasn't just broken. It was deeply personal. Every lecture, every flight, every email was a reminder of what he couldn't have. A place, a family, a life. Then, Ted made a mistake. Ego overpowered caution. He contacted the press. He wrote that a group called the Freedom Club was waging a war against the industrial system. He mocked the FBI for failing to catch him. And then he made a shocking offer. He would stop sending bombs if his manifesto was published in a major newspaper. The FBI was stunned. On one hand, they needed to stop the attacks. On the other, they were being blackmailed by a serial bomber. They realized the manifesto was also a trap, a test of his ideology. a chance to expose him. After long debates, they agreed in principle. The text could be printed, if a newspaper was willing to take the risk. The newspapers hesitated. Publishing a terrorist's manifesto felt dangerous, even unethical. Some editors worried about copycats, others worried about panic. A pornographic magazine even offered to publish it, showing how bizarre the situation had become. In the end, the Washington Post agreed. They negotiated terms with the bomber. He sent them the manuscript under strict conditions. The editors cut it for length, but kept the core arguments. On September 19, 1995, the manifesto titled Industrial Society and Its Future appeared in print. The manifesto was long, but not elegant. It jumped from topic to topic, borrowing from theologian Jacques Ellul while twisting his ideas beyond recognition. Where Ellul saw technology as a threat to spiritual freedom, Kaczynski saw it as a reason to burn it all down. He ignored that technology also saved millions of lives through medicine and sanitation. His writing was soaked in resentment. He lectured as if he were the only one who truly understood the world. He mocked therapy, psychiatry, and even the idea that aging was something to be feared. In one of his most chilling lines, he suggested that old people should be denied medicine and left to die quietly, so no one would have to deal with their pain. When the manifesto was published, the FBI flooded the country with flyers and posters. They offered $1 million for information leading to the bomber's arrest. They urged anyone who recognized the style, the ideas, or the tone to call the hotline. Here's a twist. The manifesto that was meant to be his manifesto of revolution became the very document that unmasked him. Words built a prison around the man who dreamed of freedom. One of the first people to read it was David Kaczynski. He was Ted's younger brother. He had always admired his older sibling as a brilliant thinker, a man who rejected materialism. When he saw the text, something clicked. The argumentation, the rhythm of the sentences, it felt familiar. He dug out old letters Ted had sent, handwritten pages criticizing technology, complaining about academia, ranting about the system. Word for word, idea for idea, the style matched. David sat alone, staring at the papers. He knew what he had to do, and he hated it. He contacted an attorney, then an FBI informant. He passed on the letters, his suspicions, and what he knew about Ted's life. He asked for anonymity. The FBI couldn't let this tip slip. The trail led straight back to a cabin in Montana. In April 1996, FBI agents arrived at Ted Kaczynski's cabin. They found him in his tiny, windowless hut. Piles of books lay everywhere. Wood shavings covered the floor. Homemade explosives sat on his workbench. Hidden in the cabin were bomb-making notes, journals, and an early draft of the manifesto. He was arrested without resistance. The 17-year hunt was over. The Unabomber was no longer a shadow. He was a short, middle-aged man in a t-shirt and a homemade jacket, quietly surrendering to the agents. In the years that followed, his trial became a media circus. Ted faced over 33 charges, including murder, attempted murder, and the use of weapons of mass destruction. His defense claimed he was mentally unstable. They pointed to his history of psychiatric treatment, his isolation, and his bizarre behavior. At one point, Ted tried to fire his lawyers and represent himself, insisting that only he could truly explain his ideas. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. Forensic evidence tied him to the bombs. His journals described fantasies of killing. Manuscript drafts matched the published manifesto. The FBI had the letters his brother had given them, proof the bomber and the writer were the same person. In 1998, the government offered a deal. Ted would avoid the death penalty if he pled guilty. He accepted. No death sentence, no dramatic courtroom showdown. Just a quiet guilty plea and a sentence of life in prison without parole. He was sent to the ADX Florence Supermax prison in Colorado. The Alcatraz of the Rockies, a high-security facility built for the most dangerous inmates. He spent years in near-total isolation, communicating mostly through letters and legal filings. Even behind bars, he remained defiant. He continued to write about technology, civilization, and the system. He refused to express remorse for the people he killed. In interviews, he called the deaths unfortunate, but necessary sacrifices in the war he had waged. His family was left shattered. His brother David became an anti-violence activist. He tried to use his story to warn others about the dangers of extremism. He spoke about the warning signs he had seen too late, the letters he once brushed off as eccentric, the anger he mistook for idealism. So what drove Ted Kaczynski? Was he a philosopher or a killer? He scorned modern society, but he also despised the people he claimed to defend. He hated the world, but he made no attempt to build a better one. His revolution was never about liberation. It was about revenge. Psychologists who have studied his life point to deep-rooted trauma, social failure, and untreated mental illness. The isolation, the humiliation at Harvard, the unfulfilled academic career, and his retreat into a self-made ideology all converged in one place, the cabin in Montana. For nearly 2 decades, he turned his cabin into a laboratory of death. He mixed philosophy with bombs. He romanticized the woods while mailing packages designed to kill. Today, some people still call him a prophet. Others call him a monster. But the truth is somewhere in between. A man who turned his mind into a weapon and then hid behind the very words that exposed him. In 2023, Ted Kaczynski died in a federal prison medical center at the age of 81. By most accounts, he ended his own life. He never escaped the system he claimed to hate. He died in the very machinery he spent decades trying to destroy. A prison, a bed, a hospital, and a world of signatures, paperwork, and surveillance. What if the real lesson isn't about technology at all? What if it's about a mind that felt so alone that it decided to punish the world for its own loneliness? Ted didn't kill random people because they were guilty. He killed them because they represented a life he couldn't have. Professors, executives, pilots, passengers, ordinary people going about their ordinary days. And here's the most unsettling thing. In the age of social media, self-made manifestos, and lone wolves who call themselves revolutionaries, his story feels less like a relic and more like a werelick, and more like a warning. Copebook, a cabin, and a grudge can become a threat to an entire country. We can't arrest every angry thinker, but we can learn to recognize the signs before the manifesto turns into a bomb. For now, the cabin in Montana stands empty. The bombs are dismantled. The victims' families still live with their pain. and the world quietly debates whether he was a madman, a monster, or a philosopher who killed in the name of an idea.